Yes, sir.
All right.
Welcome to the greatest Rotary Club in the universe. Keith, Mark, Ben, who's doing the start? Wendy. Wendy, please lead us in our inspiration or invocation here, George. Go ahead.
Okay. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for friends and family and all the gifts that you provide for us. Watch over this world and help everyone love, understand, and respect each other. In your name we pray.
Amen. Flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For Wade Pest.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Wendy, how about a song?
Okay. How about Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back to its root. Root for the Mariners. They don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
All right, you may exit. Mark, Ben, are you our sergeant march today?
I am.
All right. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? How about visitors of Rotarians? All right, well, that's going to be easy. Oh, we have one guest. Keith, would you like to introduce, maybe not our speaker, but his right-hand man today?
Sure. Mike Welling from the base with Public Affairs Office. We worked for several years together on different things. So thanks for setting up our speaker today, and I'll speak more about the commander later.
All right, thank you. All right, any board committee reports? All right, we do have, okay, what do we got back there? You have a committee report. What is it?
So the Fun and Fellowship and Fireside Committee met and came up with a preliminary calendar of Fun, Fellowship, and Fireside events. And we will be having our inter-Rotary softball game on September 20th. So you'll get some more information about that. And Janice's going to barbecue, and we're going to try and scope some good players out and beat the other Rotaries because we're the best of the universe.
Little update on the Megan Park bathrooms. Talked with the block contractor yesterday. Of course, he's up to his neck in alligators and all kinds of nasty stuff. So, all of his guys went on vacation on him, but he's working hard to get to us as quick as he can, hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I've been kind of a little party on it here lately. It's been a lot. Go in there tomorrow morning. Start about 9:30 in the morning, just pull those forms out, knock them apart, and clean that up so the city can come in and backfill.
Steve, what was the date for that?
Tomorrow, Friday, 9:30.
All right, so we have special projects are fast approaching, and we have many to choose from. Thank you all for contributing, finding out who in the community needs help. Make sure you get your special projects, if you haven't got them in already, to Dan Hockett. Dan, when are you leaving fishing?
Saturday. But
So you need to get them to Dan by tomorrow. And if you don't make it by tomorrow, get them to me, and then we'll have them ready. So the meeting next week, we're going to be allocating, voting on, prioritizing all of the various special projects. That's about $90,000, $95,000. So it'll be a really good meeting for everybody to attend, especially new Rotarians. You'll see how we prioritize and talk about and then vote on the special projects. So thank you, Dan and Steve, for driving that committee. And then Curtis Melder is going to help next week because those guys are going to be gone fishing. And it's nice to have an engineer in charge. And thank you, Curtis, for stepping up and helping out run that meeting next week. We'll do it together. We'll get through it. John Janke, you have a announcement.
Yes, Great Business is going to cut down Christine's tree on Saturday. So I want to get some help on, to clean it up on Monday evening, Tuesday evening, Wednesday if we don't get it done. And I didn't want to tie up the weekend, and it looked like September was getting really busy. So I will send out an email with the address, and we will start at 5, so you can get there at 6 o'clock, or work for just a couple hours, and kind of work it out. So we just we're going to split some the wood about this big around. We've got a splitter. So we need to split a little wood. A lot of people that don't have to work during the day are helping Steve, so that's good. But people that are working all day can work in the evening, get this tree taken care of. You don't have to work out, have to go to CrossFit or do any of that kind of stuff. You can just, do your squats and pick up sticks.
It's free, right?
It's free. And Travis always bought all the wood, right? So it's really good fir, and we're gonna need a trailer. We're gonna need anyway. I'll take care of this. Logistics. I just need people with gloves and a bat.
So what kind of wood is it, you said?
Fir.
Fir.
Yeah, dead fir, because we cut it down.
Thanks, John. All right, so the golf fund tournament is coming up, and Nick Van Jarsveld, can you tell us if we're going to go to that?
We're going.
We're going.
What am I supposed to tell you? We're going? Yes.
All right. Who's we?
You. Thanks for bringing it up. Daryl Heisler and Joe Jones, who's currently in Disneyland working on his game, I'm sure.
All right, so everybody on our team has to show up Monday to get into the logging, so we're good and lubricated for golf. Chad Paulson, you weren't here last week. Can you give us an update on the men's league golf and how that went?
Well, neither my team or the Styles team won the championship, believe it or not. We had a heck of a time out there trying.
Yeah, it was fun.
I don't remember. I remember between us two.
All right, so Brock, you're next. You have the longest committee in the history of Sedro-Woolley Rotary. Tell us about it.
Well, I just found out I'm the chair of this committee, but if you look at page 10 in the program here, the booklet, this is the name of the committee, the Promotion and Public Relations Raffle Wheel Promotions for Auction Managed Storage Locker and All Public Relations Committee.
That'd be the PPR, PMSTLAPR.
So we actually need to meet after the meeting today, okay? It'll take us all of about 30 seconds, but, so for those people, what's that?
The first 10 minutes you're going to spend learning the
That's right. So if I could have Mike Crawford, Craig Crawford, Curtis Melder, and Dan Pocket all meet after the meeting, we'll promise it'll be really short.
Don, I'd like to ask Don Ostrom to be there as an advisor because he sets up.
And just so everybody knows, the Styles team beat his team badly, not only in the playoff part, but also in the scramble part as well. So,
It was a healthy battle for 6th or 7th place.
that's right. All that matters is that we beat you.
Until next year.
Oh, there's always next year.
Yeah.
All right, I think that does it for announcements. Any others from the floor? Paula.
Just an announcement regarding tonight at City Hall. There is a presentation on civil discourse It's a really important subject, and we'd love to see more people show up for that.
What time?
6th grade. So we got another great band coming up this Sunday for some country music, so make sure you get a chance to come down to Riverfront Park. And we do now have a beer garden, so come join us.
Great concert last week. We have a great program, but we'll give you a chance to skedaddle if you have to, and please make sure you pay your penance and apologize to the speaker and all that good stuff. And I'd like to bring up Senator Keith Wagner to do the introductions today.
Thank you, Carl. So it's my pleasure to introduce the executive officer of our neighbors in Sedro-Woolley Island, Commander James Rankin. He's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, so you know he's a good guy. And he's a commander, so you know he's a good guy. But I want to talk a little bit about his bio. In the military, we have long bios that get read from end to end, but for our proceeding, I've abbreviated it. So James Rankin, as I said, graduated from Annapolis in 1999, or 97, which means he's a young kid. He was first assigned to VQ2, so he served in Rota, Spain. He served in Jacksonville in VP30 as a P3, straight P3 guy. He served aboard the USS Enterprise, CVN 65, out of Norfolk, Virginia. And he finally got to Whidbey Island, our part of the world, to be stationed with the World Watchers of Fleet Air Reconnaissance Squadron 1, VQ1, out on Whidbey. After he completed his department head tour in 2010, he volunteered for the Global War on Terror and was sent to Afghanistan for assignment with Task Force 5 TAC 35. Most recently, he served as the Anti-Terrorism and Force Protection Officer for Carrier Strike Group 11, the Nimitz Strike Group in Everett. He's completed his Master's of Arts in National Security Studies with American Military University. He has a whole bunch of decorations, a lot more than I ever got. You must have done something right, James. Meritorious Service Medal ×2, Air Medal ×2, Joint Commendation Medal, Navy Commendation Medal ×3, and 2 Navy Achievement Medals. He assumed his duties as executive officer in April of 2017, and he's here today to bring us up to date on what's going on at the base. Thanks for coming, Commander.
I'm going to try staying in one place for a minute, but thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction and the welcome.
You have to hold the microphone real close to your chin, sorry. And you can, either one works.
How's that?
That's great.
All right, now I can move around. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. It's been a long time since I've been called a young guy. You know, I told a cousin of mine, when you're over 40 in the Navy, you're one of the oldest guys in the room. So, appreciate that. My kids do not say that. Skipper Moore sends his regrets. He actually got to take some well-earned leave before his changing command next week. So that's why he didn't get him, and he got the second hitter here today. But I'm happy to come and tell you a little bit more about NAS Whidbey Island and the great things we're doing for you and the rest of the community. All right, our mission, our primary mission is to support the fleet and the fighters. So electronic attack, maritime patrol, and reconnaissance squadrons. We are an air base, and those 2 air wings that are out there, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, are our primary mission, making sure they have the training they need to go out and execute the Navy's mission globally. Part of that is the training so that they can do that. And then the other mission that is very important and we can't emphasize enough is to support their families. It's one thing to send our sailors out. My job as the base XO is to make sure that the family members of those deploying squadrons have every need taken care of. And that when we deploy, it puts us at ease that our families have the tools and resources available, and also knowing that there's a solid support structure for them to reach back on, whether they're day 2 on board NAS Whidbey Island, or in my case, year 9 on board NAS Whidbey Island. Next slide. Team Whitby is a construct and a concept. At the end of the day, none of us can do anything all by ourselves, right? So Captain Moore can't do anything with the base all by himself. We've been a very successful base, if you missed it on the front slide, 2016 and 2018 Naval Installation of the Year. But that's not just the base leadership that does that. That's also every tenant command on the base, which are all the tags you see going around, to include the 2 air wings, Naval Ocean Processing Facility, which actually also runs a 24/7 operational mission on the installation, and then the rest of our training and support commands, but also our tribal partners, some of which you see out in the community as well, and then our community partners, to include you all. Next slide. Where we're at. I love telling my sailors when they check on board, the sun never sets on the sailors of NAS Whidbey Island. We, as a force, are globally deployed 24/7, 365. So, as you look at our slides here, I mentioned that we had Maritime Patrol and Reconnaissance, which are P3s, P8s. That's the blue star with the white background. That's their global deployment site, as you see there. Back when I was a young junior officer, the P3 squadrons, you were East Coast or you were West Coast, and that meant you deployed East Coast or West Coast. That's no longer true in the Navy. Now when you deploy in the Navy, you deploy globally. So we have West Coast squadrons deploying all the way out to the Med, and East Coast squadrons deploying all the way out to the Pacific AOL. For our growlers, our electronic attack, that's the black star with the red background. We are the single site for all electronic attack squadrons in the Navy, with the exception of our one expeditionary squadron that is permanently forward deployed into Japan. The rest of them are all home based here at NAS Whidbey Island, and I know you in Sedro-Woolley see them fly over periodically as well. The green star with the blue background there, that is our sailors at Naval Ocean Processing Facility, Whidbey Island. You heard me mention earlier, they're the other operational mission that's executed forward. So they do support the SIRTAS ships, which is a sonar surveillance ship. So they will go out and deploy in a crew concept with that. And a bunch of sonar techs running around an air station. It's kind of a weird concept, but that's where we keep them at. And then the other piece, you heard in my own bio mention that I volunteered for a Global War on Terrorism support assignment. And that's what our yellow star with the black background is. We have about 113 sailors that are deployed in support of other missions. They're not deployed with their parent command, but they have either raised their hand or been asked to raise their hand to go forward and support missions in Djibouti, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, and elsewhere around the world. And that's what that star stands up there to represent, so that we remember that they're out there serving us. Next slide. How many people are we really talking about? And I'll talk about the growth of the base in a little bit. But overall, any given day, 10,500. That's between my military and civilian support staff working on the base that are assigned to the base. And with that, you have the veterans and the family members in the area. So, you know, almost a one-for-one of military dependents, because not all military are married and not all have children, but that you still see about a one-for-one between the military and the dependent ratio. And people sometimes like where they move to and stay in the area. I was just having a conversation at the table about why do you go on vacation when you live in paradise? And my attitude is, when I hang up my head in the Navy, I live in paradise now, why am I going to move? So it's a wonderful community, love the community, and it draws in several veterans and their family members as well. How much money does that all bring into the area? Island County did an economic analysis, and $825 million is there. We're doing our own right now to validate some other information, because numbers have changed since then. We've seen some base growth since then as well. All right, next slide. Told you about population change. Fiscal year 2014, we were just under 7,000. Lots happened on the installation since then. If you've driven by, if you've been participating in any conversations, if you've seen the housing market, And I know that we've impacted even Sedro-Woolley's market a little bit here. But we had 3 P3 squadrons relocate from Hawaii and come up to NAS Whidbey Island. They're now calling NAS Whidbey Island home. And they have since converted to the P8. So you started seeing them arrive last year. Now they're all fully on station here. That's where our big spike is. Now, as the P3 transition to the P8, there's a reduction in manpower on the aircraft and within the squadron itself. So you'll see a small dip before we start climbing again. That next climb up is the stand-up of a Triton mission control facility. So part of the goal of Maritime Patrol and Reconnaissance, they're bringing on an unmanned platform to execute some of their mission sets. And the mission control is going to be at NAS Whidbey Island. The aircraft will be based further south down in Point Mugu, California, but the mission control itself, and it will be a global mission control. Our sailors will be working there in Oak Harbor, but controlling aircraft deployed globally. So you'll see a small bump up with that, and then as VQ-1, the Navy's largest operational squadron, disestablishes, you'll see a little bit more of a downtick. But then with the Growler, there's going to be a potential increase in the Growler footprint at NAS Whidbey Island, so it will kind of offset that loss of VQ-1, as well as the stand-up of VQ-11. Okay, next slide. I mentioned that we've impacted your housing area, because I know we've impacted Oak Harbor, we've impacted Anacortes, and we impact really a lot of Skagit County, and then Sedro-Woolley. So what is the NAS Whidbey Island housing area? The easy part, it's all Whidbey Island. The harder part, when we do a housing market analysis, the team comes out, they get in their car during peak traffic hours, and they drive for 1 hour. And our housing hour area is defined by that 1 hour drive. And it's not defined by a compass, drawing a circle on a map. It is defined by, no kidding, people getting in their car and driving 1 hour. And it takes them all the way into Sedro-Woolley. So that's why you work with our family members in the Navy. You see some of the Navy members living all the way out here, and I say all the way, it's not that far, but you see us. You will see us around the community. You will see us in town. You maybe even have some of your neighbors that are Navy. Next slide. Talked a bit about the Maritime Patrol and Reconnaissance Force. You heard me mention the Triton. That's a picture of that. It looks a lot smaller than it actually is. That is actually a very large aircraft, a wingspan equivalent of about a 747. So it's not as long as a 747, but its wings are about as wide as a 747. It's pretty decently sized. And then the P8 is a 737. So what's going on with those guys? We have 6 squadrons currently stationed there, 3 of which have completed the transition to P8. The other 3, when VP1 returns from deployment, they'll commence their transition to the P8 airframe. You still have a reserve P3 squadron that's not listed there, and you have the VQ1, the EP3 squadron. And as the Triton mission control comes online and the mission sets that the EP3 executes is taken on by Triton and other assets, VQ1 will disestablish, and so that one squadron will go away. But BP69, our reserve squadron, will continue on into P3. It'll be, I believe, the last P3 squadron. And we are currently the only home of the Navy's P3 aircraft, because all of the East Coast squadrons have already converted to the P8. I've already talked about the Triton mission control, and then future construction out on Whidbey. I'll show you a little bit more on another slide, but you have the mission control facility, you have aircraft ramp support, and then you also just have the P8 support facility for maintenance that needs to go on with that. Next slide. Electronic attack is not immune to change and growth. You used to see the prowlers flying overhead, and I know probably a few years back people were in here telling you all about the prowlers and not about the growlers. Well, now our conversion to the growler is well complete, and we're looking to expand even, because the Navy has realized how vital the growler is to the Navy's mission. They've had an expansion of mission sets themselves, and the job changes. As our adversaries change, our job changes, and so you see growth in the growler community to adapt. some of their growth that you'll also see is maintenance hangar, next-gen jammer support, because they're still using the Prowler technology for the jamming, and then also got to train people. So that's where the FRS, that's the replenishment squadron, that's who trains people to come on board, and that'll start up. Next slide. So Growler growth. We don't have a final record of decision yet. We have preferred alternatives that the Navy and Congress are analyzing. But with what we're looking at now, overall Growler operations are going to increase at NAS Whidbey Island. We're still looking to single-site Growlers at NAS Whidbey Island. You will see an increase of 36 Growler airframes at the air base, and up to another 630 personnel, which brings in about 860 more family members. And I showed you how that's going to impact our growth chart. So really, we're kind of already near that peak because there's other things on the base that are going to happen that are going to make it tick down and up as we compensate for that growth. One thing I do want to point out, all of this doesn't come overnight. I'm not talking about all of this growth happening today and tomorrow. Fiscal year 20, fiscal year 24, and fiscal year 25. So this growth is projected over a relatively long term, and will continue throughout that time frame. And this fall is when we expect the final record of decision to be released on the impacts from the route. Next slide. What does it mean around here? Because you see them flying, that means you hear their noise. And you see them flying. How often do you see them flying? Okay, this purple shaded area is the total operations on the airfield. An operation being a takeoff or landing of any airframe, and how many are happening at NAS Whidbey Island. We're not going to be, this is where we're at today. We used to be a lot busier. And so, if you look at historically over time, while we're increasing our training missions and increasing our flight operations, we're actually still below our historic levels. These other lines called field carrier landing practices, something you don't see as much in the Sedro-Woolley area, more packed down in the Cookville area and NAS Whidbey Island itself. Those lines are balanced out between what happens at Cookville and what happens at NAS Whidbey Island. But like carrier airframes, they have to do what's called field carrier landing practices. Because landing on an aircraft carrier is very different than landing on a runway that doesn't move. And it's also 8,000 feet long, so they have to practice on landing on a much shorter runway. And with the analysis of Growler growth, what we did, there's some changes in technology that are going to actually help reduce the number of flight operations that we have to conduct. So if you look at the lower dash line on both of those, this one being total operations at the airfield, this one being field carrier landing practices. There's new technology called precision landing mode or magic carpet, if you're familiar with the Navy's terminology, that's going to reduce how often a pilot needs to go out and do those practices. So with that advancing technology that came on after the study was commenced, this is part of the reason for the delay. We had to go back and reanalyze the numbers with what the technology is probably providing. Next slide. Where we're at. So we come over you with training, with our military training routes. Those are the yellow highlighted routes. And we'll fly all the way down into Oregon with those routes, as well as over into eastern Washington and into Idaho. The Roosevelt, Okanagan, MOA being military operations area. That'll be where they'll do some practice events. And then over the water, one of Captain Moore's other hats is he's the range coordinator. So the range coordinator in the Northwest is also responsible for the surface and subsurface ranges that the military uses. And then you see W237, that's the Growlers over water operations area where they do some of their training. The P8 and the P3 also go out and do training in, specifically they'll go out to the Okanagan MOA, Roosevelt Okanagan MOA, and they'll fly out, and more times you'll see them at the larger airfields doing their practice landings or extensively over water doing their mission training. And one of the other benefits we brought on when you, our electronic warfare range with our electronic warfare emitters, It's not very good training if you use the same antenna every day to turn on the same signal every time. Students kind of get wise to all of that, and they can pass the test without really studying for the test. So, because the word gets out there, you will see this signal at this time. So one of the things that we brought on board is our mobile trucks that can go out really into the Olympics is where we're using these now. And they can move around that emitter in that truck and make the training more realistic for what we will actually see in the combat environment. Next slide. What do we bring to the community again? Now I got to go back to the community because I just told you that I'm going to be flying more, and what the PA and the Growler community is doing. One of our favorites, one of my personal favorites, is NAS Whidbey Island Search and Rescue. So you can see 2016, 2017, we really increased how many operations we were coming out and doing. And a lot of this, search and rescue is out there because of the Growler airframe, so that we can go out and rescue our jet drivers in the event that they have to eject. Fortunately, we don't have to do that often. So what we are able to do is we're able to go out and rescue members of the community that they're not necessarily specific to your area. Sometimes they've been hiking up the Pacific Crest Trail, they've been hiking in many different areas. But 2018, 26 missions, one of which I know made the area news because I saw it myself. It was on top of Mount Baker, the 4 Boy Scouts that were rescued. That was NAS Whidbey Island search and rescue team that went up and picked those 4 up. And I bring that up because we bring one of the most capable helicopters to the area for this. And we're not the first one called. We can't be the first one called because we're Department of Defense. We use the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center to coordinate and verify that all civil assets have been exhausted or are not capable of performing the mission. And then they call us and we go out and help them. We're happy to go out and pick people up when they need help. Other notable rescues that we've also had have been picking up climbers and hikers that I can't tell you how many times I get a phone call where somebody's fallen down literally 1,000 feet and they need, they're not walking out. They need somebody to come in and hoist them into a helicopter and get them down to Harborview or one of the other area hospitals to care for the level of injury that they have. Usually we're responding to pretty significant injuries and not minor. I sprained my ankle and I just need some help walking out. But at the end of the day, 72 lives saved last year. 30 lives saved this year so far. Okay, next slide. Safety and security, all those airframes, man, they require a lot of extra security because it is not the Navy that it was 30 years ago. Our security concerns, our technology that has come along, and our protection of that has significantly increased. So if you work on the installation, you see a lot of changes to how we approach security just to even get on the flight line. And that's a good thing, but it's also a growing thing because we all need to learn how to adapt to that. Smartwatches and smartphones, well, they're becoming more and more part of our everyday lives, not necessarily compatible with what we do in all of my workspaces. Let's see, I train a lot. This is actually my security forces right here, training to respond to an incident. You see more and more the active shooter threat worldwide in the news. I shouldn't say worldwide, but nationwide in the news. We train to that very frequently. And making sure that we know how to respond to that ourselves should one ever happen on NAS Whidbey Island. With that, part of my training is I'll actually shut down the gates, at least for a little bit to prove that I know how to do it. And then once I got them shut down, okay, reopen and let people back in. Because I can't shut them down too long. Is anybody moving in traffic on Highway 20 out in that area will definitely feel that impact if they're shut down for more than about 10 minutes. All right, public access. I'm sorry, I can't just invite anybody to just drive onto the installation. That is one of the complaints we get. We have to turn people away every day. We can do it by invite, but we can't just have the general public drive on board. And that wasn't necessarily the case 15 or 20 years ago. And then compatible UAV use. I actually have a spot on the installation where we allow recreational UAV use. We have it over on our seaplane base side, which is removed from the main airfield, so it's not going to endanger my aircraft. Now, the other thing, though, I have a lot of commercial partners out in the community. I don't know how many of you this room use UASs, but we've seen realtors using them, and other surveyors. I'm sure there's several other organizations that use them for their line of work now because it makes their job easier and better. They can get better data just by getting up a couple hundred feet above a property or above an area to survey what they really need to accomplish. So we work with those folks to make sure that they get a chance to use that UAS to go out and execute their job and deconflict it with our job, because I don't want one of those flying into an aircraft. It's going to be bad for everybody. And we have a dedicated telephone line. There's an app that recreational UAS users use to know who to call, when to call, and we frequently are making those authorizations and approvals. Next slide. Okay, military construction. Told you I was promised I'd get to this one. So part of this stuff in yellow didn't used to exist. That's where we're putting more P-8s on the ramp. As you know, I brought 3 more squadrons in. I'm transitioning to a slightly larger airframe. I need a place to park the airplanes. So that's what you're seeing there. And the same thing with the Growlers as we continue our ramp expansion projects. One of the big news stories that I'm going to bring up is renovate a barracks. So barracks is where my junior enlisted single sailors live. Some of these are pretty decently aged, 50s and 60s time frame on construction. Not a lot of renovations and updates. You know, you maybe hit a mid-period one in the 80s, and now, 2007 or 2018, they need another update, another refresh. So that's what we're doing. And part of the advances in technology, and as weird as this is, I'm going to take that exact same square footage, and I'm going to put more people into it. But I'm going to increase their quality of life by giving them more privacy. And so while I'm putting more common area in and increasing the number of beds, I'm also finding a way to do it while giving those junior sailors more privacy and less cramped living conditions than they're currently in now. And it's, so I know there's going to be a big morale boost once that construction is finally complete. And it's going to increase the bed capacity in that specific building by about a third. Let's see, then other support facilities just for the specific mission support. Next slide. Still a lot going on in the next 6 months. As I mentioned, Captain Moore's executing his change of command next week. And then we're looking at our military appreciation hosted by the town of Oak Harbor on September 8th. The big news is those going to be the Growler record of decision this fall. And then the Triton Ground Control Station. We're breaking the ground now on that mission capability, progressing towards coming online in the next week. Next slide. Best base in the Navy, 2 of the last 3 years. They actually changed the rule because of us. We can't do that anymore. Which is a good thing. It gives the rest of the Navy a chance to compete. But a lot of that, this is the big tag, but all of these other things have happened too. We've had energy awards for our reduction in energy usage, making things more efficient, community service awards, natural resource management awards, cultural relations awards. I mentioned our tribal partners earlier, and that's what we're talking about there. And then suicide prevention outreach awards. We're best based in the Navy, not just because the guys and gals wearing a uniform out in the park. We're best based in the Navy because people like you ask people like us to come talk to you and tell you what we are doing and how y'all can interface and help out. Just also support your neighbor and also how we can support you. Thank you for your time.
Go anywhere. I'm sure there's a question or two. You guys
Yes, I did not ask that.
Yeah, we got 8 minutes if there's that much time, and if we end early, that's okay.
All right, does anybody have a question? I apologize for not asking that on my own. Yes, sir, in the back.
With the addition of more growlers, you're applying through a land use to the noise situation on the island, or the use. Has that happened, or is that?
So we are doing environmental studies for the noise levels across the island. And we do have a separate brief that shows where the noise mapping really happens, as well as environmental impacts to the wildlife in the area.
Did anything ever come out of the groundwater contamination from the foaming agent?
Yes, it has. So we've been doing, it's perfluorinated compounds are a result of the aqueous film forming foam, which firefighters use to combat aircraft fires predominantly. So up at NES-Whidbey Island itself, and also down in Coopville at the outlying airfield that we have there, we've been doing groundwater sampling. It's voluntary for those members of the community in the area. We've reached out to those who had wells that we knew about and asked to sample their groundwater. And in both locations, we have found wells that tested above the EPA's lifetime threshold advisory, or lifetime health advisory. Now, I will say it's not a banned compound presently, but it is being identified as a compound of concern. So this is where the Navy has been very forward-leaning, especially the Navy in the Pacific Northwest, has been very forward-leaning on identifying what's going on with the groundwater, learning how the groundwater flows, and talking to those members of the community that live around there and are impacted by that groundwater. It only impacts those who are on well water. So there's wells that have tested on NAS and OLF itself, but also down into Coopville. And the Navy is partnered in making sure that those people whose wells have tested positive receive bottled water until a longer-term solution can be put in place. The town of Coopville is actually drawn from well water, so we are actively working to get them put on a filtration system on that well, so that that would be not a non-concern item for that city. And then some of those residents in Coopville also putting them onto the city of Coopville's water supply so they can draw from that well instead of a private well. And then Oak Harbor, the city of Oak Harbor, for those that are not on wells, are not impacted because the city of Oak Harbor draws its water off the pipeline that Anacortes uses, and which comes from the Skagit River. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Are there any other branches that are stationed on Whidbey?
That's a great question. We do have a small contingent of the Air Force. The Navy is the single operator of electronic attack, Navy has all the electronic attack aircraft and DoD inventory. With that, the Air Force needs familiarity. Even though they gave up the mission and no longer fly that mission themselves, they put a small contingent on board NES-Whidbey Island to continue to train into it, and so that they can go back into the other branches of the Air Force and bring knowledge of that capability. The Army supplies my vet service and my food testing and health service. And let's see, the Canadian Navy also has a small contingent present to support the Naval Ocean Processing Facility mission. It's actually about 25% of Canada's sonar technicians work on board NAS-Whidbey Island. And then the Royal Australian Air Force has been doing some training they have purchased the Growler from the United States, and they also fly the electronic attack mission, so they do some training, much smaller level than they were previously.
No Marines?
You know, the Marines left. In the back, sir.
Do you guys still do survival training over on the Ludwig Peninsula?
Tell me what still do means, and I'll tell you.
By force?
Not by force, no, sir. My search and rescue helicopter will go do training for executing their mission of rescuing people on the Olympic Peninsula, but we don't do a survival and escape training over there. Sir?
You don't have to answer this if you don't want, but last spring over in the Okanagan area, there was some pilots that painted some paintings.
Sky art, yes, sir.
What happened to those guys?
Those gentlemen had to go explain themselves to the Commander Naval Air Forces. Yes, and I will tell you that We don't tolerate the bumper stickers, anything like that. We're supposed to be good stewards in our community. We're supposed to represent the community well, and that is just indicative of an environment that we can't allow to persist. So, like I said, they had to go explain their actions and justify why they were going to be able to continue flying aircraft. Yes, sir.
Do you use simulators?
We do use simulators, and actually, that's another reason we can take down some of our flight operations even with an increase in aircraft. The model of the P8 and is to actually do most of its training in a simulator environment, and the nature of our simulators have gotten to be incredibly accurate with flight modeling, along just the same on par as what the airlines are using. And also the Growler airframes that extensively use simulator training as well. So definitely a value added to our mission. Sir?
Can you just give a broad overview of how the Growler used in combat?
So with electronic attack, various signals will be transmitted by the enemy, and it could be from whether it's a surveillance site, knowing that we're coming, and also anything really that transmits a signal without getting into specifics on what frequencies the Growler operates on. The purpose of a jammer is to deny those signals to the adversary. And by denying it, I'm going to take away their ability to use that. So I'm either going to just put so much noise out there that it's unusable, or I'm just find other ways to make sure they can't use it. And there is a kinetic means as well with missiles that we can send after that radar site to destroy the radar site, so it's permanently unused. That answer well enough for you?
Well, Commander, thank you very much for the very informative talk. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate your service, both of you. Thank you very much. We have a token of appreciation. Next time you get a good radar jammer, you can use this pen to put it in the logbook. All right, awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. With that, we're winding down. I just want to refresh everybody's memory. We have several things going on tomorrow. Let's see, tonight. Paula, you have a meeting, right? 6:30?
Yeah, the League of Women Voters is putting it on
And it's where?
at the City Hall.
At the City Hall. Tomorrow morning, Steve, we got 9:30 at Bingham Park, right? Or is it 9:30? Okay. And Monday, 5 p.m., we're going to have a lobbying party, right, John? You're going to give us more information on that. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it. Oh, wait a minute. Put your shampoos and your soaps in that bin. We're going to keep it here for a while, and then hand that over to the food bank. And what's the proper name of that, John?
Solution Center, I think.
Yep. Food bank and solution center. All right.
Oh, Helping Hand, whatever.
Helping Hand Solution Center. How about that? Does that work? All right. And just double checking here. Oh, next week we have a board meeting on Tuesday. Anybody's invited. It's Janke Industries. Thank you, John, on Murdoch and Ferry at 6 p.m. And with that, we are